Whew, man, managed to get to sleep last night. Got a lot on my mind, but as usual, as typical, it doesn't always surface deep, intrinsic thoughts that permeate out into the world and affect the world. And you may never be graced with the wordage. Those are the things that effectually change reality. And whether or not some Theban alphabet or a coterie of witches understands. So when you have a coven versus a coterie, why the difference? It's kind of the difference between a murder, right, and a flock. But what distinguishes this? These are the things that people don't think about, don't realize, and even hide from. And what they're not understanding is that their reality has been hijacked long ago as a fork of witchcraft. And I'll tell you the difference. It's warlocks. It's men who supplicate and follow along with what is termed and best described as Mother Circe's seductive ways of drawing men and women in together collectively as children, because we always are. We always crave our childhood, and they build bridges to the past. And right now, every song is an ode to the 80s. They tried to boost up the 1980s. Even those who didn't live in the 1980s can understand this. Oh, things were cheaper. The neon signs, people were more ignorant. People were this, people were that. It's like, no, you're full of shit. People were hungry. They were reading theological manuscripts. They were discovering more about theology, Gnosticism. They were doing higher mind thinking, and people like Alan Watts transcend every time and space because you can break free from the witchcraft. You can break free from the deviant behavior. And what witchcraft is based on is an ignorance that women will full well admit face to face with you when they're really doing soul searching and they're really coming down to the essence of who they are, what drives them. And when they begin to become whole and complete, they realize that they're entirely incomplete. Why is that? Why were they engineered this way? Who would do such a thing? Who would actually create such a device to abhor the truth, to obfuscate the truth in them, of them, around them? That they would be carrying some sort of torch that they didn't even rally for or vie for. And that this is the crazy thing about life, is that there has to be involved a life that presupposes itself as one under the agency of free will. And then allow them free will, put them in a plasticine tank, or more like a mouse utopia, and create dead ends to where they must realize this is my inevitable fate. And some don't do that. Some transcend. It seems like the higher the IQ, the more submissive a person becomes. I actually think that the intelligence quotient tests do not measure intelligence, but measure compliance and conformism. And you can look back at the eugenics and Galton, Darwinian connections to this, and it makes a lot of sense. Even more so, there's tribal collective conformism. that's inbred in people, that's placed into people, to where they revert back to an Order 66 situation. So I'm walking, obviously, and I'm talking. And when I want to stop talking, I will. When I want to stop walking, I will. I don't do jack shit for you, any audience, anyone. I don't give a flying fuck, because I don't care about the collective. I don't care about the consensus. The consensus is stupid. The consensus is wrong. I appeal to individuals, and even more so, when you are appealing to individuals, they will listen to you for so long, and they will go, I remember now. I got to go. There was something I was supposed to do 12 years ago, or 25 years ago, or 35 years ago. Like I left the pot on. That's how submissive, I should say dismissive, it is. But it forces you into supplication. And there are many, many odes to this truth. And it's all found in Wichor literature. It's really petting the pig's belly. And that's what women were taught to do, right? Before they castrated the male. Then they realized I never need to take credit for anything I do. When I do take credit, then my face is there. So I'm going to disappear into the obscurity. Right? And we have the artifices, we have the architecture, we have the blueprints of this methodology in Kabbalistic magic, but the practitioners have no idea. No idea. Even people like Madonna and others that really consider, or Lady Gaga, that consider themselves adept. Why do they consider themselves adept? Why is it that nobody's caught them coming out of churches and hanging out with certain people? Because they don't need to. It's not required. You can go through these educations and be spoken to all day and all night and still get sleep. And all they want to do is ensure, like Epstein, that you have taken precautions and that you are in a computationally valid chamber, a safety chamber, that if you ever watch Crow 7-7, the early on stuff that he's starting to put out, because the problem with Crow 7-7 is he's got a lot of hubris. He's one of those intellectual. He thinks he's intellectually superior to other people. That's the truth. Now, you can get a lot out of those people. You can defend them, but at the end of the day, it's still the same. So he started charging a premium instead of putting it out for free, and then he's going to be dead, right? And the sound the siren heard around the world, he was too late. He came out with the information. He was right on time. He charged a premium, and now that he's putting it out, it's too late. It's too late. Meanwhile, the gravitas, the gravity of the situation is that everything that I put down with the EPL archives was spot on. Because I knew that bending reality wasn't to my will, but it was a return back to the original state. And I studied this, and I was taught by masters that I was quite aware of, that were aware of me, but weren't concerned with the me or what happened to the me. It was the moment of transcription, of reception. because of the fact that this is not a reality. This is not real. This is a fork off of reality. Reality is elastic, it is plastic, and it does conform and snap back to an original shape or form that from our perspective is very close to Metatron's cube, but it's not. See, we're always going to get lost in our perception. Just the fact that we call it light, the fact that we call it electromagnetics, the fact that we call ourselves, even identifying ourselves as a number. You see, that's what the government has done, is it's trumped us. It's gone, look, through this decoding process, the very thing that makes your name assumably anything at all, which you only go back 500 years, and it was all about like the surnames obviously were an identifier of what you do, but we flipped it around to where the sort of hyphenated part is spoken out loud, right? The part that doesn't matter as much, the part that says you're an individual, you're distinguished from this other person. For long periods of time, it was just you're the blacksmith, and that is a huge title. It wasn't about, the hubris of documenting you and your existence. It was like, no, you're the 12th in the line of this generation that came to this new land, and this is what you do. This is your occupation. This is what occupies you. This is what allows you to connect. And you have to do the best damn job so that people come from miles around. And competition set in. The basis of a now. Saying this is the number you have to beat. This is the greatest number. This is the 500-pound bench press. This is the 4-minute mile. These are things, these are coveted numbers that you must fear and understand that you could never approach. Then all of a sudden, people break things down and they go, well, I did it yesterday and I beat it yesterday. No, you didn't. We have to make you feel on the spot and surround you with television cameras and crews and bring out coaches that are certified. What? What has anyone learned? You have to get down to the fact that learnedness means nothing. Nothing. And I talked to a guy some years back, around 2018. It was back when rideshare was actually rideshare. And so people got a little break. It was almost like this nostalgic, these conversations in San Francisco were insane. The type of people that you would get, the flux, why they would take rideshare, why they would try to get these reduced rates. The intricacy and the balance of the system to be able to hash out and accurately deliver people to their destinations while giving 3-4 people rides at a time. It was cool. It was fun. It was like going for an adrenaline junkie ride, man. 3 to 5 hours would just go by. And the earlier you got up, the more people you could give rides to, and it was just like this flurry. You were like a bartender, but you were more valuable, right, than that, because you were supplying these people with the transportation to their jobs, to wherever they were going. And it fouled up. When you got one rude individual, when you got one self-entitled person who considered themselves an individual, the whole thing fell apart. But I remember giving this guy a ride. I've talked about this before. And he goes, I've been in the computer industry since I was a kid. I may not look that old, but I was a bit of like a protege and got into this whole thing very early, right? And know this person just got out of a meeting over here. I'm picking these people up in the early days of Salesforce and from buildings thereabouts to take them to these meetings. And they like The original San Francisco likes grassroots. It doesn't matter if they've got billions of dollars. They still want to identify with their city. You know, they still want to be, like I say, grassroots. They still want to be very humble, and um, they want to start something else. They want to head down the coast toward Redwood City, Daly City, wherever it may be, and start something else that nobody knows about. You know, and it lost that really quickly through the superficiality. Really, that whole Seattle grunge, it stuck to San Francisco long before that whole title was given. It was a very punk-esque sort of scene that did trickle down through San Francisco, and it was part of that was a very dark force that you see, that are discussed in the underclass podcast. JJ Vance's Operation GCD. Somebody who he has on a lot is Cosmic Peach. She was on his program last night with her husband. I guess she's about to deliver a baby soon. But you can understand why her senses are up, and why the serial killer stuff is. She's like super senses on this, right? Her studies are very acute to understand how this works. But you see this really dark cloud of not just strange genius occurring there around, Scotts Valley, and going up through San Jose and creeping up the coastline like a cloud, of genius and disruption. That's something beyond entropy. And it affects people differently. It affects professional downhill skateboarders differently than it does musicians. And people are trying to grab onto that. And I remember giving a lot of people rides that were musicians that knew many other musicians. Like, when you're in San Francisco and you live there and you're exposed to all these people, you never know who you're going to fucking meet. Right? You never know who's in your cab or right next to you. And it's a collective. They know that. They know it's a collective pool. So this guy was telling me that he goes, there's only 2 or 3 people who really know what the fuck. And he goes, I've been thinking about this too, and I can tell it's been on your mind, because I was like, the first question I had was, man, you really know about this stuff? How deep does non-Euclidean spherical mathematics go into this? And then it just popped off a conversation, just like that. He goes, holy shit, dude. Yeah, I've been thinking about this stuff. He goes, it has everything to do with it. And he goes, you can really get sucked down a rabbit hole, so to speak, because when you start to look at the number combinates and the zeros and ones, and you break it down even further into like integers and so forth, you start to wonder, who the fuck thought this up? What is this really all about? Because it undeniably gets into esoteric mathematics of the thing that's really promoting this and making these computational systems work, and what they're really connected to, right? A fork off a fork off a fork off a fork. A fork meaning it's not the original code, but it has to, in some way, respect the original code. And when you see that this must be attached to something, where is it? That's where the two-dimensional, 2-bit aspect of who we are comes into play, because it's like you can't see it. Yep. It's neither moving billions of miles per hour, right? And it's neither stationary. You can't see it because you can't come at it from that angle, right? But yet, the numbers are being spit out, the transcription's being spit out, and they found that angle long ago. In fact, that angle's been known through certain sects, and the closest you can get to it is the Tree of Life, where they've cleaved off 4 from the original 6 source. And those are some evil motherfuckers. And you see what that manifests into, right? No matter what a weird, sodomizing, goy hating, disreputable, I couldn't even go on with these Pharisee Khazarian mafia. And it's really goes more to the heart of just a Jew in general. But that's how they think. It's like, I'm Jewish, I don't do that. No, you're not a practicing Jew, but you get all the benefits. No, I don't. I'm broke all the time. Oh, well, you're the one who's being sacrificed and knows that you're being sacrificed. And you know what you had to do is start to sacrifice those around you as well who weren't in the practice of being Jewish. Because every single line, I'm linked in with a line of the Society of the Cincinnati. Why aren't I rich? I'm my direct lineage is Philip Marsteller, who was best friends with George Washington, and was a honorary pallbearer at his funeral. Why aren't I rich? Why aren't I known? Because every single generation, you have to come to this cross, so to speak, and sign up. You have to come back to the origin, the junction point. And they say it's not a cross, it's an X. We're tilting it on its side. It's still a cross. In fact, have you ever thought about that? I mean, I hope you have. The Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucian Cross, same as many Christian sects, where it looks like, there's all this artwork and all these colors, and it's like, it's so beautiful, holy, holy reverence. And it's like, have you broken it down into its mathematical constituents? Have you looked at the meaning throughout time and ages? Like Neil from Gnostic Informant, have you gone to see the statuary of Bacchus? Have you studied Pan? Do you understand the origins of Baphomet or Baphomet? Do you know the connotations and the truth about Eve and Lilith? Do you think about this? Are you able to go back to a base and burn all this information and go, this is the essence of the truth. This is how people thought. You can't erase this or escape it because this is consciousness and they need you to be conscious. Just like the fish needs to be conscious in order to grow, right? There is consciousness there. It's not like this Cartesian abstract. The thing is alive, and the reason that it was able to grow and flourish and have cells and mitochondria and all the tasty little things that we like to tear apart and extract mechanically and reform into nuggets, those things, right? It has to be living, just like you have to be living. You have to have been alive and you have to have fucked up. So I ask you, what weighs more? And this gets into, the Book of the Dead or the Egyptian hieroglyphics and what they really mean, right? Or the hieroglyphic monad will teach you even more through John Dee. Because through their failures, they saw the purity. They were trying to get past it and go, there's no way that this computational system can trump purity. And people like John Dee and Kelly, they were wife swapping and doing all their weird ass shit. They're trying to come to the end of tragedy, the end of death, the end of negativity. And they found before them a bottomless, fathomless pit, because what they were looking at is what they couldn't view or see. They were watching the informational highway that this reality, if you want to even call it that, is forked off of. It's a presupposition that was supposed to disappear. If you look at like bridge work, when a master bridge is being created, you would swear that they are making the most odd shaped fucking bridge. If you could go back through antiquity, you'd be like, what the fuck are they doing? It's like, no, those are the pillars to support the construction of the bridge. That whole thing's going to be taken down. Then the World's Fair starts to make fucking sense. Why would they build these intricate structures And even more so, how long were some of those structures even standing when they are all taken down? Who would do that? Who would destroy, like Stellium 7? Look into that if you're not familiar. Who would destroy these massive giants, these titans, these elephants, these woolly mammoth type creatures that were miles long, miles high, oftentimes, or a mile high? I mean, there's implications that these things were of biblical proportion, you know, which seems preposterous. But then you get into the trees, the mesa, the plateaus, right? You get into this massive forest. That forest, once it has become, and nothing else challenged it, in a spiritual sense, if you want to use that term, from a computational subset or perspective, it exists in a point in time, a place in time. It reached an epic place that connects it with the main progenitor, right? The main informational system. So as those things are erased here, and we're under this presupposition that time actually exists when it doesn't, we're witnessing, we're a part of, and we're being destroyed along with everything else. It's just coming apart. That's why our reality is coming apart. You have to ask yourself, are you living through the representation, through the holistic representation with a W, not an H, of someone, a persona, a character, a personality that would serve principle, and the principle itself is going to be found everywhere, in every fiber, no matter if something is like just created to be a misnomer, a pseudo false highway system of information that reaches its epoch and dissolves. But it existed in a time for a reason, like that bridge work. It made the informational highway even stronger. And there's no way they can hack into that. There's no way that this dark agenda can hack into it. So you could look at an entire subset as if it was a Mandelbrot and say, that's not even scratching the surface of it. The entire Mandelbrot. That's impossible. It's like Google, you know, it goes on seemingly infinitely and it keeps reproducing itself. No, you'll notice that your perspective has to change. And when your perspective doesn't change, all it is a big fucking blob of pudding on a paper towel. You're reading too much into it. You're adding, you're creating additions to something that just is what it is. And it doesn't need to go through the process of degrading, but to us, it appears that way because we're in it, we're a part of it. You couldn't have the type of conversations that need to be had that I've had with the people who've just come into my, like when I was driving rideshare mostly years ago, having these conversations with people where it's like, this is impossible that I would pick up all these people one after the other. Suddenly I'm at Stanford University having conversations with people, going to Berkeley, taking professors to their jobs. And then suddenly I'm ending my night going over Golden Gate Bridge. And I'd been listening to Dr. John and his music and remembering him on SCTV, right? And I'm giving a guy a ride that goes, holy crap, life is weird. Check this out. Pops it up and he goes, this is probably the last picture of Dr. John that was ever taken. He was with me. And what was I studying? What was I looking into? Voodoo. Hoodoo, voodoo, right? Because voodoo gets into this. It's going, what the fuck is going on? I mean, that's what the Mardi Gras and the Mardi Gras beads. Do you ever look into this? Is everything just a surface, superficial expression that's supposed to serve you as you gorge on food and shit and then die of fucking early, heart disease? right? Is there does reality vie for something more? Is your reality, this is the reality you're tapped into? Because when you look into the superficiality, it doesn't exist. And people are beginning to awaken to that. And they're very annoyed by those, the ones who like the illusion. They don't even like the illusion. They're eating plastic. Their bodies are filling up with plastic. They're gorging on plastic. It's not even necessary to build you up and sacrifice you anymore. Do you understand what those sacrifices were for? There's people stuck in that state of mind. Why do you think all these politicians look so miserable? They thought they were buying into an eternal solution and that they trumped everyone and that they thought bigger than them. And then they realized the whole fucking thing just like they built a molehill, they built an anthill and sacrificed all these fellow ants and built the thing. And now somebody just took a piss on it and it's dissolving right before their eyes. And they're going, what the fuck did I do? It's like, exactly. What you did is you displayed that you believed and that you took this energy in your belief and sacrificed the pure expression, the principle. You proved that it is not this fork, this subset, this non-reality is not worthy of the preconditions of the totality. But it was meant to happen, just like you knew it, just like Michael Aquino and Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard and all these fucking idiots. They thought they were genius. They thought they were tapping into something. It's just like that Indiana Jones scene where the fucking Nazis melting. That's what happens over and over again. But it's not like Nietzsche proposed. It's not on a flat time repeat. It appears to be a repeat because there's an echo. And that echo proves that it's hollow. You don't call out into the totality and hear an echo back. So what we're experiencing is an echo. And the echo has now transduced into a single wave line that when it gets to that single wave, everything's just gone. But the thing is it never existed. And the thing is that no occult organization created something and manifested something and tricked the totality. You'd really have to understand the gospel of truth, even more so the gospel of Mary, the gospel of Thomas. You'd really have to put some thought into this. And then James, John, there's a lot of others that show you the tapestry of this. And speaking of tapestry, look at all those buildings. Are they really worshiping the sun? They're saying, no, the sun's about it. The sun's about it. Like we're bound to it. It's not a celebration. We're bound to it. Like we think we're the chameleons being fed grasshoppers under the false light, but we're not even the grasshoppers. We're the bugs that we're picking up from the carcass of the grasshoppers. That's what we are. We're here to pick everything apart and make sure that it's picked apart, psychosomatically, spiritually, in every other way. That's why we're so inept. There are no adept here. People can believe what they want to. They're always going to be Pangloss. They're always going to choose the way that makes them feel better. Well, I'm going to live for today. That's a feminine notion. It's a feminine notion. Only a female could do that. And that even more so, the engineered female. Because it says nothing about femininity in the totality or the whole. Right? That's why the Gospel of Mary exists. It's like, no, you're saying there are no real men. There are no real women. There are no real men. There is no real anything. We don't hearken back to principle. And what do you think destroyed the society? You were meant to destroy society. That's what the Ouroboros is. That's what Samsara is. The Hindus understood this shit so long ago, and they've just been going along with it. And they are a people in and through degradation. It's why these four-armed mutants come out of their culture. It's why they already reached this. They already reached the epic end. Really, honestly, the ones who, I mean, like Jainism came out of, it's like, wow, God is dead. Well, that was spoken how many hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years ago? Like that shit happened a long time ago. God isn't dead. We are just a bump on, not even a bump on God's ass. We're not even a dingleberry off God's ass. Very insignificant. You couldn't get more insignificant than this quasi-reality that we live in. It's like, well, that's nihilism. No, it's not nihilism, and it's not even super nihilism. It's beyond nihilism because it's nothing. And when you embrace nothingness, you begin to understand. And then you have superficiality based on subsets of nothingness. You can't create a veneer out of nothing, right? There is no cellophane wrap that you can place around, just like Nietzsche says, under her dress and finery. Do you understand how defining that is? Like his sister ended up doing exactly what he wrote down, amending his works the last 11 years of his life. Because what happens is a man thinks that he can reach this status or this state or this place, right? And achieve some sort of wisdom. There's no wisdom. Only ignorance awaits you. And in all the hubris that you existed as, you can rebel against it. You can go along with it. But you're just going to be the same N-word at the end of the day. That's all you are. You can't live both ways. So what's the answer? That's what people think. What's the answer? It's always been the same answer. It's your diet. Yeah, it seems like it's going off on a tangent, but it's not. That is your religion. It's to hold the fort, hold the truth, and maybe, just maybe, you exist on some level, in some way, everywhere. And if you don't, you can easily pacify yourself by unexisting without even experiencing the death. That's really what the Gospel of Thomas is about. To never stop seeking. That is the secret. People want to just keep reading it and they want to go, oh, the secret must be in here. And it's like, no, it was in the first sentence, dumbass. Never stop seeking. That means never stop perfecting principle. And when you get to the place where you realize that purity, that when I talk about purity, I'm not proclaiming I'm pure, dumbasses. I'm not saying anything. I'm not making any fucking grand statements. So fuck you for thinking that I am somehow calling myself superior because I recognize. If anything, it's because I'm inept and I reached a place of total non-existence, a place of nihilism when I was very young, and then worked beyond that and went, it's nothing. But what are you? You have to be based in principle. You have to be based on purity. And then you can't exist here. There is nothing to support you here. There is no bridge work. The master masons came and went. There's no longer, just like Rudolf Steiner wrote about, there's no longer a reason for the masons to operationally go about what they did as of a couple hundred years ago. So why aren't I some benefactor of my Marsteller family traditions that I'm directly related to. Why aren't I? Because I come from a long line of people who no longer supplicated to it. That was it. You think of 1776 as the beginning, but it was actually the end. It created full circle. The new Atlantis created the full circle. Nothing that happened after that was viable to anything. They ended it. They left they colonized with the 13 British colonies, but guess what? They left Britain. They got out. They got away. You could go, oh, they brought the banking system with them. No, they proved what they would do from the beginning all over again. Don't you see it? If they were given that chance. This is what we all say, right? If you were given a blank slate, a clean slate, what would you do? And what did they do? They did the same shit all over again. They brought their Illuminati bullshit. They created their little fucking micro organizations that would dissolve into another organization and another organization. The WEF, that's why they're all freaks and they think they're really smart. And they're just linked in with the Knights of Malta. And here, there's that satellite arm with the Society of the Cincinnati. And God don't play that game. God don't play that game. And at first, they used the German people as their slaves. My people. And on my coat of arms, there's a lion and a sword often depicted. Guess what? From my mother's side, where she doesn't even really know where my grandfather came from, he ended up becoming a psychologist and a world-renowned jazz musician. Did his part the best he could. Served time out just miles from here. Ironically, Fort Ord. Just literally miles from here. It's now the CSUMB campus. He was supposedly born in Mexico, but the odd thing is it's the patch of Mexico, like El Paso, Texas, it's the side of El Paso that doesn't, it's not part of Mexico anymore. And what was thought is he was a part of a whole child trafficking ring. His mother, my great grandmother, right, was actually a practicing witch in Santeria. He held a little newborn baby because that's what people did. Like, they had to raise all the mistakes of these idiots, right, that are banging each other. My grandmother too, this was their commonality. She had to raise like 6 of her siblings when she was just a teenager. That he's holding this baby on the second story floor out the window, and the baby moves or bumps, and the baby falls and dies. And he's carrying that with him his whole life. So I'm sure he had some Jungian moments that brought him into the psychological field. But his last name was Leon, lion, right? And does that make me special? Does Marsteller, the keeper of the horse stables, which is what it means, that can be traced back to 1096, to the Crusades, does that make me special? What am I? Right? I'm Stellar Mass 13. I'm that 13th generation removed. cleaved off. And there's a very close relationship with 13 and 23. Because 23 is that generation that the Habsburgs supposedly made it to, where they could no longer function, like literally function, breathe, move, think. You no longer have a person there. Well, that's what this country is. This country reached the status or the state of the Habsburgs. One more, I would say reflection, but deflection took place from the subset of return. That is the beginning of this country. Echoed back and said, there's no new information here. Why do you think they've been working so hard to replay everything? Just the epic moments need to be recorded to overcast and trump everything else, so that when one slave stood up, that's a Messiah figure, and spoke out to God into this computational construct, it's laughable actually, but it's not. Because it's really like, wow, do you know how immense God is? Right? This idea of God. What is it? Chris Langan, is it MCTU? I can't remember his universal bullshit, but he makes a lot of sense. But it's just amazing how simple these high IQ people are, you know? Like this Dear Abby letters, or Dear whatever, these self-help publications, you know, Savant. You know, it's just kind of like a walking calculator. It's like, okay, you're good at calculating certain things, but you are just an aspect of the intended abstract that can't unfold anymore. So it's not like this heavy bit file information. It's just a reflection of the lack of depth in this reality. Like, look at the Mandela. I'm not talking about like the Mandela effect and all that. I'm talking about the tapestry of solar sun artwork. Look how boring it is. You can only have so many colors, and then you get into the accuracy of those colors, and you look at the vibrational patterns, and it's just the same thing over and over again. People don't want to admit how boring our reality is, how easily hackable it is, how it doesn't take a super genius to understand that. So they've been talking about this kid who disappeared, who revolutionarily took plastic and made diesel out of it. And it's like, no, I saw that 25 years ago. The Japanese had developed this idea. No, that's a global, so they don't want to call, it's not some big conspiracy. He was using this like distillation unit after probably using something like a fucking rice cooker to cook the shit back down. He wasn't doing anything that was genius or out of the ordinary. It's like when you see this kid in interviews, he's not a smart kid. They've been doing this for many years. In fact, I remember in this interview them talking about how they had developed technology. I mean, they were turning this into petrol, which is even more difficult, right? Because you have to get back down to the ubiquitous aspect of how can this be used beyond just mere diesel or fuel, right? I mean, you understand what petroleum jelly, you understand when you can reduce this to more of a petrol type base, how many more uses there are, and how you're not going to be put on blast on radar, and they're not going to come after you and try to take you out. Well, how genius was this kid? Right? He wasn't genius. And in fact, I guarantee that he looked this up and got the idea from the internet. And he was making money off of it. And when he started to get several, like a few 100,000 subscribers, and he's putting this shit up on TikTok, you could see why a globalist effort would get a little bit like, we're gonna have to take this guy out. He's starting to make a little bit too much noise. And then it's kind of like a South Park episode. I want to make my own diesel. Then you got a few people doing that in their backyard, and it never goes anywhere, and nobody really wants to mess with it. And people are like, I just want to keep my nose to the grindstone and stay to myself. I mean, the fact that I was talking about this yesterday. There was a lady. I don't even want to get into it, but she wasn't able to even go off and play with herself in a remote area, right? Without some weird Karen videotaping her. And that's not even a term that I would use and don't want to use. And that doesn't come from my mouth, but it really was like a Karen back, not even that long ago, 2021. The lady killed herself. She was like, fuck it. This isn't a world I want to live in. You know? She had a hard life. She went through a lot of shit. What was she doing to anyone? What was she doing to anyone? She wasn't doing anything to anyone. But when we think we can push our own buttons and get off on ourselves, there's something else there, aware. And that's the creepy aspect of it. There's something watching and aware and trying to plant itself into you from another place, transposing itself on you. But I don't want to get into the details. I don't want to give it any glory. I don't want to over talk about it. It's dismissive. It's unfortunate, and it should have never existed or taken place.